Who dares trespass in the valley of the machine god? You shall be destroyed, interloper. Welcome to Machine Gods of the Noxian Expanse, Reclaimer Edition by Richard Kelly and Alex T. of Black Oath Entertainment. Machine Gods Reclaimer Edition is a full conversion of the Machine Gods system to Mork-Borg, and with Mork-Borg comes simple character creation. So let's get started. We'll first roll on our attributes. Attributes are very simple. We roll 2d2s and 2d4s to get our results. So our results are d2 minus 1, which is a 0. A flat d2, which is a 2. A d4 minus 1, which gives us a 1. And a d4 minus 3, which gives us a 0. So pretty balanced stats, and none of them are negative, so not too bad. We get to assign these stats between agility, presence, strength, and toughness. Let's focus on strength and toughness, and we'll leave agility and presence at 0. Now, we get to choose features. Features are life experiences, outlooks, horrible curses, and other things that set you apart from everyone else. You begin with one feature, and you may reduce your HP to take a second feature, and you may add -1 to your Omens die to take a third feature. We're gonna just pick our own feature. The specific one I have in mind for this session is very interesting, and I want to give it a try. It's called Gremlitic Ostracyte. So Gremlitic Ostracyte is an ill-omened birth which caused your community to drive you into the wilds. When you touch technological objects, there is a 2 in 6 chance they break. When you touch a technological creature, it suffers d4 damage, bypassing armor. When you touch a machine god, roll a d20. On a 1, the god explodes. This only happens the first time you touch it. I'm going to try to touch a machine god in this session and make it blow up. So we have a 1 in 20 to do it, and we got some omen die to potentially give us some rerolls on that. That is my goal for this session. Let's finish up our character creation. To calculate our hit points, we roll a d8 and add our toughness. So that's going to give us HP of 6. And let's generate our carrying capacity, which is strength plus 8. That's going to give us a carrying capacity of 10. Each item in your pack generally uses up 1 of your carrying capacity. Heavy items use up 5 carrying capacity. Our starting omen die is a d2. And so we will start with 2 omens. Omens are a meta currency in Mork-Borg. It can be used to reroll die, to reduce a crit failure to just a standard failure, and a couple other items. I'm going to try to save these as much as possible because, again, I'm trying to roll that 1 after I touch that machine god to blow it up. So that's my aim, but we'll see if we can get there. Now, let's roll some starting gear. For starting gear, we roll for rations, our currency in our kifl, and then a few other tables. So let's roll our rations, which is a d8. That's going to give us 5 rations. Let's roll for our pack. We have a tent. Let's roll for our vital asset. We have a random resonance core, which is very exciting. Resonance cores are the equivalent of magic items in this setting. These are objects that cause technological effects so powerful and mysterious that they can only be referred to as magic by the folks in the setting. Since our character really struggles with touching magical gear, I will assume that they have already touched this the first time and have not triggered their gremlitic ability to destroy the magical artifact. So let's roll for the resonance core on the resonations table. And we rolled a 4, which is Cauterize. Let's see. Cauterize. With a searing touch, you cure all maladies. Touch a target. Deal 1 damage bypassing armor to them, then remove bleeding, blinded, fatigued, infected, poisoned, restrained, and stunned from them. Awesome. This game has a number of status effects, which is one of the ways that we take a Mork-Borg chassis and add a little bit of additional crunch to it. That additional crunch is, of course, helpful when you're playing solo because it helps solidify the impact and direction of combat encounters, and also gives you some strategy to work with as you're moving through the game. Okay, let's get back to the starting gear. And let's see what we have left. We have a couple more rolls to do. Get back to a set of thieves' tools. Cool. And now we're going to roll for our weapon and armor. We have a club, and for armor, we have half plate. Cool. Half plate is a heavy piece of armor, but fortunately with our carrying capacity increased, we should be okay to carry all of our items. I'll do the math on this. All right. And that is the total of required character creation. There's a couple more stats that we can add, some story motivations. So I'll add those in a second, but let's get our inventory straightened out. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Let's see, 5 rations, a tent, this cool resonance core, thieves' tools, a club, and half plate. We also start with a water skin, some clothing, and our kifl. which I haven't rolled for yet. Let me roll for that real quick. Our Kiffle is our cryptocurrency wallet, a digital wallet that everyone in the setting has. So we're going to roll a d8 and multiply that by 10. So that's going to give us 30 in our Kiffle. Okie dokie. Let's do a couple of the motivational items, and let's also roll for our character name. Okay, we have 2 syllables for our name, which is going to be 2d66 rolls. 61 and 24. Leah Odd. Let's go with Lloyd. That's kind of fun. Okay, so that's our PC name. Lloyd, what is your background? So we've rolled that Lloyd is a sacred diagnostician. So that's interesting because, again, Lloyd is someone who destroys technological objects that he interacts with. So maybe at some point in Lloyd's life, somehow he obtained some sort of mutation or some sort of biomechanical condition that now is disrupting technological artifacts that he interacts with. So used to be a diagnostician and a quasi-holy man that interacted with these objects, but now is unable to in the same way. Where is Lloyd from? Lloyd is from the Singing Towers of Vox. The Singing Towers are ancient structures that whisper when you approach them. So maybe some sort of ancient communications device, maybe something like a cell tower or some sort of reception, some sort of tower that generated radio signals or other digital signals that can be interpreted as vocalizations and words. So very cool. Scars of the Expanse. What are your scars, my guy? Plasma burns. Interesting. How many plasma burns do we have? So we have burns on Lloyd's chest. Maybe from an artifact mishap that has scarred his torso. And we can also roll on motivation. I already have a specific motivation in mind. we are going to be attacking a holy site of a machine god. Perhaps out of revenge, perhaps a prophecy that Lloyd has seen, perhaps simple greed. We'll figure that out as we play. I'll roll on the vice table to see what vice this gentleman has. And we have the vice of paranoia. That feels appropriate for the setting. I think everyone's going to have a little bit of paranoia. Or at least it'll be pretty easy to, as you live near the Singing Towers of Vox and they're whispering to you all the time. Okay. Let's move into our first scene in the Noxian Expanse. For machine gods, there are multiple systems that you can use to solo play. There is a GM emulator scene creation system, which is very similar to something like Mythic, where you can create scenes, roll to see if the scene has a twist, and then check on new scenes, and then progress as you work towards completing threads in our story, or story arcs as they're called in Machine Gods. That is the main GM emulator system, but there are also additional systems that you can use as well. There's a lot of procedural systems that you can use to play the game. There is a hex crawling system that you can use to explore the Noxian Expanse, and there's also a ruined dungeon delving system that you can use to do dungeon crawls. So all three of these can work together. There's also a freeform system of generating narrative events that you track using usage die, which you can compare to clocks, timers, or the Black Hack's usage die system. All of these can be used to on the fly create a story element that you can then track against. Let's get started with some combat. We are going to be fighting against a Storm Herald, a augmented human with nanite lightning surrounding their body. So that is going to be a fun challenge for our character to start. The Storm Herald approaches, angered by our entrance into the Machine God's domain. So the first step of combat is going to be to roll initiative. Which is a d6 roll. If we roll a 4 or higher, we go first. In this case, the Storm Herald goes first. A nice rule system in Machine Gods of the Noxian Expanse is a action die system for our enemy combatants. Every turn that an enemy is taking an action, we roll their action die to determine what they are doing. So let's roll the action die for our Storm Herald. And we get a 6, which is a branching coruscation. Range D6 damage, attacks all foes. Those hit may invoke an additional resonation this day. Well, D6 damage is a lot of damage. Let's see if we can try avoiding that damage, and that's going to be with our character's agility stat. Okay, we rolled a 9 with 0 agility, would be a failure against the D12. We have our plate, half plate armor, so let's see if the armor would apply here before we consider using the omen. So the half plate armor. Oh, so the half plate actually does have a penalty for avoidance. It will be +3 armor to our +3 DR to our agility checks. So this 9 here will actually be subtracted by 3 to get us a 6. It does have an armor value of D4 +1. So let's see what we can do with that armor. We're going to take the hit here. We're going to take D6 damage. So that would be 4 damage less our armor, which is going to be D4 -1. Or D4 +1. So 4 damage -4, 0 damage. All right, we get bolted by the Storm Herald, but we are still on our feet and maybe stagger a little bit, but are continuing to combat. All right, on our turn, Lloyd is going to attack with their club. All right, a 5 is not going to hit. We do get to add our strength +2, which will give it a 7. So that is insufficient. The Storm Herald does have a trait, reduce all incoming damage by D4 after armor to a minimum of 1. So something to keep in mind for this character. Let's attack again with the Storm Herald. They roll a 3, which is the Channel Current ability, which is ranged D12 damage. Holy cow. Let's see how that goes. Let's attempt to avoid the attack. So we do roll a 12, but because of our heavy plate, we have a +3 difficulty to making this check. So we are going to be hit. Let's roll for damage. Rolled a 1, which is excellent. Let's that'll be completely negated by our D4 +1 armor. So excellent. Okay, Lloyd, let's get some damage on this guy. And that is a 20. We get a crit. When you roll a 20 on a d20, you crit. During an attack, you deal 2 times damage and then reduce the enemy's armor value by a die step until repaired. Sweet. They appear to have an armor of d2. So we're going to roll a d2 to see what their reduction is after we deal our damage and then multiply by 2. So let's deal damage. A club deals d6 damage, so let's roll for our damage. We rolled a 6. Times 2 is 12. Amazing. Let's see what the armor roll is for the Storm Herald. We're going to roll a d2. So we deal 10 damage to the Storm Herald. That's going to reduce its hit points from 12 to 2. It does have voltaic negation. Actually, let me take that into account. It also reduces damage by an additional d4. Okay, so it's going to have 3 HP left after this attack. Awesome. The Storm Herald has a morale of 8. I believe this is sufficient to trigger a morale check. Morale. When a creature or NPC is stressed, it checks morale. This is done by rolling 2d6 against its morale score. If it rolls its score or higher, it breaks down. Okay, so 2d6, it has to roll an 8 or higher, so it's pretty unlikely that this will scare it away, but we can see if it does. So let's roll 2d6. All right. It rolled a 7, but it did not roll its morale score of 8 or higher. So let's continue the fight. The Storm Herald will attack again. We're going to roll its action die. Again, which again is a ranged D12 damage. They rolled a 7. We should try to avoid this attack first, so let's try avoiding it. We do not avoid it, so we're going to take 7 minus our armor. So less 2 plus 1 is 3, so we're going to take 3 points of damage. We do take a good chunk of damage here. Ouch. All right, we're going to attack again. Let's see if we can get another big hit in. $18. That is a whammy. Let's roll our damage die of d6. We roll a 6. Excellent. The opponent's armor is going to be a d2 roll and then a d4 of voltaic negation. Okay, so less 1 is 5, and then less its trait of voltaic negation. Okay, so it's going to be taking 1 point of damage. That's going to be reducing it to 2 HP. Okay, I think we can roll another morale check here. I'm feeling like we are pressuring this kid. Okay, and we rolled a 10, which is higher than its morale. So it has failed its morale check. If the creature rolls its morale score or higher, it breaks down. The PCs can choose to let it flee or surrender, or they can gain plus D4 damage against it for the rest of combat. I will let the Storm Herald surrender, and let's see if we can get some details on how to approach this machine god. The Herald submits and gives us some directions on how to enter the machine god's lair. We descend a staircase hidden by an ancient mechanical portcullis. We descend into fog deep underground. All right, let's move to the ruin rules. Each time we enter a room, we get to roll on our uses die to determine if we are descending further. Oh, speaking of uses die, we should roll it for our armor. Okay, we rolled above a 2, so our armor is good to go. We're going to enter the first room. And let's roll on some of these tables here. So we're going to be calculating the room shape and size. Let's roll 2d6. Okay, so a 6x2 room. Let's take a look at how many exits we have. We have 3 exits. The room's contents are 4. A windfall. We roll a d4 on a 1, there's treasure. Cool. One, we get some treasure. We're going to roll on the scavenging table. Very cool. We get to roll a d20. It's going to give us a 13, which is a random piece of gear. And we find a quiver. All right, well, we have a quiver of arrows. I'm going to just leave that where it is. Let's go back to the room gen and finish generating this location. We're going to roll on the ruin risk table. And this is going to tell us if we run into any monsters. One, we do find some monsters. Let's roll on the ruin encounters table. We find a glass mother. A being of living crystal that commands shards of itself with magnetic fields. The mother croons to its children of their duties and responsibilities, but will not hesitate to rip them apart for their sins. So this is a construct. It's got a very tanky body and 11 hit points. It has the trait chipping, fracturing. Each time the glass mother is hit by an attack, reduces armor value by a dice step. So it has a ton of armor to start, but you can break it apart. So that is the motif for this creature. Let's get into combat. We'll roll a d6 to determine our initiative. And the glass mother is going to make the first attack. It strikes as we enter its lair. A 6. Body crash. Melee deals damage equal to the glass mother's current armor value. So that would be a 10 damage. Let's see if we can avoid this attack. We roll a 10, which is subtracted by 3 because of the increased difficulty. We do not beat our target value. So we are going to be taking some damage. Let's roll our armor to see if we can survive. And I don't think we can. We're taking 10 damage straight up. We have a total of 5 potential armor. Let's go ahead and roll it. We subtract 4 damage, which is going to give us minus 6 HP. And that is the brutal end for Lloyd, descending into the caverns of the machine gods and getting promptly murdered by a glass mother. The goals of Lloyd will have to be carried on by someone else. I hope you enjoyed this look at Machine Gods of the Noxian Expanse. And again, the Kickstarter is launching this week, and I hope you get a chance to play it. If not it, get to another solo game and get to gaming. That is my call to action. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.